Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Benefits Wise, where today we're going to be going over employee benefits in 2026. We're going to be talking about what strategies people are going to be looking at, what's on the horizon, the shape and the landscape of benefits at the moment, and most importantly, what HRs need to know about. I'm here alongside my colleague and our Employee Benefits Director, Tasha. So, Tasha, thank you for joining me and lending your wise words of wisdom. So let's dive on into it. So the first area I wanted to talk to you about, Tash, is kind of looking at what the employee benefits landscape is as we stand today. So we've got a couple of kind of key topics to go over. So if I kind of fire us off, rising costs and tighter budgets, what are we looking at there? We know that healthcare costs are obviously on the increase. What other kind of pressures do you feel HR are going to be under at the moment?
Well, I think it's been an interesting year, Dan, for sure, for most companies. We had the budget, which did throw a bit of a curveball with the national insurance increases.
Yep.
And actually, I think that's had quite a knock-on effect. Certainly, it's been a cost for all companies that we look after, but it's also had the effect of things like, are they going to be recruiting people? Or our headcount, is that going to be a lower number? Is it going to be stopped for next year? So I think there's all of those things that's really squeezed on the budget for sure.
Definitely, and I think more HRs will be feeling under pressure at the moment to make sure that 2026 they've got the right budget in place, they've got all of their ducks in a row, and everything's going to be ready to hit the ground running. One area which you see a lot of is this evolving employee expectations. What can you lend on that?
Yeah, and again, I think we've all seen that, haven't we? Post COVID, from the pandemic, things changed. From people going to be working at home. I think people are a bit more aware of their benefits.
Hmm.
Not always, but people have an expectation of what they might get from an employer. So I think there's a bit more flexibility there. I think the other big thing is around well-being. The four pillars of well-being, which we can talk about in a bit depth
Yep.
soon, but it's around the financial, physical, social, and mental well-being. That's been a big thing for people. So I think there's a big expectation there.
Definitely. And as I say, we'll come on to speak more about that. Regulatory uncertainty is always a fun topic, but obviously we've got a big budget on the horizon.
Yeah.
What are kind of our clients, and what do we see in the marketplace of people when it comes to that uncertainty of what's around the corner?
Yeah, and I think, look, it's a really difficult one, isn't it? The budget's been pushed out. I think it's the 26th of November. I think perhaps we see people stalling a little bit when they're looking at maybe putting their budgets together, looking at their strategy,
Mm,
because of the impact, say, of the national insurance that we just talked about. That does create uncertainty and make people think, shall we just hold off for a bit? So that's always a factor, though, I think.
yeah, it's always going to be there, isn't it? We just have to roll with the punches, I guess, and make decisions based on what we know in the here and now. So it's
For sure.
yeah, we need to wait and hear more on that. I think probably I'm best placed to take the next one, digital experience. So we know that lots of people are after this greater expectation of this seamless technology experience with benefits. They want to be able to log on to something, see what benefits they have. They want to be able to enroll. They want to be able to easily use things. They want that tangible experience, don't they? And obviously, the technology of today is technology has never stood still, but even more so, I think today with the introduction of AI, etc. These tech platforms are just getting bigger, more robust, and they can help more on the employer side of things as well. When it comes to the actual management and in administration of benefits. So I think this one is going to be forever evolving.
And
And
exciting, Dan. I think, this
it is
space is really exciting for people. I think, like you said, it doesn't stand still. I think people expect things at the touch of a button. They expect it
Mhm.
quickly. So I think, especially for somebody like you in a creative environment, this part really is, exciting.
Yeah, definitely. Completely agree with that. And I think just to cap off this kind of landscape of where benefits are sat at the moment is just this pressure on HR and people managers to demonstrate that return on investment. How do we help people in that area, Tash?
Yeah, I think again we're going to come on to talk a little bit about how we can help the sort of ROI and the spend. I think it's a really difficult one for a lot of companies. Making sure that we talk about benefits not being your best kept secret, but
Mm.
equally promoting them enough so that they're used. So I think there's a lot of pressure around all of that area.
Definitely, definitely. And seamless transition takes us into how we can make our budget work harder for us. So, what we wanted to do is just give our audience and our listeners and our viewers a couple of key areas to kind of look at when you're thinking of budgets. Obviously, they're probably having a knock on the door from the finance team saying, "Hey, what's happening for 2026?" We know lots of people are looking at introducing new benefits, maybe looking at a piece of technology to house all the information under. There's various projects on the go. So, Tash, maybe if you can just talk us through some of these key areas which our audience can think of when it comes to making that budget work harder for them.
Yeah, I think one of the things we're seeing from a number of clients at the moment is probably the bottom one, actually looking at finding out what matters most to their employees, to the people.
Mhm.
It's going to be wrong to make any assumption that the HR know exactly what's right for people in a demographic or a personalized way.
Mm.
So surveys are a really key tool
Yep.
to
Ask them
actually
what they
listen.
want.
Yeah, absolutely. Find out what they want and also then act on those surveys. That's really, really important. Even if it's a small tweak to something that comes out of it, the worst thing you can do is do a survey, get the results and do nothing with it. So if it's just a
Yeah.
marginal gain, that can be really important.
Yeah,
And
that will frustrate the life out of anyone who takes the time to actually, give their input and their insight to then just have that parked and, not acted upon. It is incredibly frustrating, isn't it?
yeah. And also it's about having an audit, having a look at what you've got because I think, companies go along and they pick up benefits along the way. Benefits have evolved, lots of core benefits have ancillary benefits and sometimes those can be duplicated when you've got different
Hmm.
benefits. So it's sometimes really good to kind of lift the bonnet and have a proper audit and have a look at it to see where your spend, actually is. And as we say there, at delivering real value. And also benchmarking can help around that. What are other people doing? What's right for your industry and your people? I think making it really specific to your business, looking at kind of where you are now, where you want to get to, and how you're going to get there.
Yeah, definitely. And Tash, we've got salary sacrifice on there and talking about, smarter options when it comes to, funding benefits. Obviously, you touched on the NI increases earlier on. And again, I mean, we often think that lots of people have probably got this area covered, but we still have people perhaps not maximizing various salary sacrifice benefits. And there's still, potentially lots of untapped resources in that area.
Yeah, I think, like you just said, we're still coming along across loads of companies that, don't do salary sacrifice even on the pension. So
Mm.
again, it's really brilliant to be able to give them a budget to have to focus on some of these areas. Um, and again, we're looking at other benefits such as, I don't know, electric vehicles, all of those
Mhm.
things. Well, so it's for a lot of people, Dan, it's what you don't know, you don't know. And I think that's the whole point of lifting the bonnet, having a look at what you've got and what you might want
Yeah.
versus, what it's going to cost. So salary sacrifice can be a brilliant way of kind of producing a budget for you.
Yeah, you're right. It's always that juggle with, what you want and what the budget will allow, right?
Yep.
Which again kind of brings us on to what are these emerging priorities. So obviously we speak to lots of clients in this area. We speak to lots of partners, and we can kind of put our finger on the pulse of what we feel is going to be even more of a priority in 2026. Obviously, the financial well-being area isn't really going anywhere, is it? So, we know that everyone is still feeling that burden of cost of living. People's budgets for their personal finances are being stretched like potentially never before. So we know that the financial well-being area isn't going anywhere, and I guess that leads us on to the health and well-being. So going beyond the benefits as well, Tash.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just talking about financial well-being, like you say, people are being stretched. And of course, we're going into the, Christmas period, which puts masses of pressure on employees. We will often say that people will, try and have the best, Christmas or festive season as possible.
Hmm.
And that can have a real knock-on effect of their kind of mental well-being, come up past Christmas and, they've got a debt potentially, and then they're not optimal at work or they're worrying about it. So
Mm.
it's like, how do we help the employer to help the employee?
Hmm.
It's a twofold thing. It's kind of get the employee back to in a good position,
Mm.
but also help the employer to tick their sort of well-being areas that they're trying to cover.
Definitely. And, the next areas we're looking at is, that digital experience of benefits. And again, lots of these tech platforms will have some element of discounted perks, which again, on the lead up to Christmas, what a brilliant benefit to be offering your members of staff. There's more personalization, particularly in the health and well-being. There's platforms out there that can, look at what people are engaging in and then provide recommendations based on their activity in there. So yeah, these tech platforms, they're getting better, they're getting more intuitive, and they're going to be something that's here to stay. So again, we don't see that going anywhere in 2026. And again, Tasha, you kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but aligning benefits to the people strategy and the culture, and it's part of the value proposition, isn't it, from an employer point of view?
Yeah, hugely important. And again, that's coming up time and time again, with clients. And I think what we just need to make sure is that, like you just said, the benefits are aligned to the company. There's not a broad brush, one size fits all here.
Mm.
And I think that's where it's really important to listen to the HR teams and the people to find out what's right for them.
Yeah, definitely. Couldn't agree more. So if we were to summarize this, Tash, what kind of key takeaways do you think we should be letting our audience know?
I mean, the first one, Dan, probably seems really obvious to start planning early. That's probably true of everything that we should do in life. But I think it is really important because, it's so often that you come back from Christmas, the New Year's impacted, you
Hmm.
know. I think it's really important that you looked at your year ahead. Um, and also, like we say, look at some of those benefits, look at the culture, align it with your values, find out what the people want, in
Hmm.
terms of benefits, whether it's surveys or audits or whatever that might be. And then I suppose this bit is more relevant to what you do is sort of look at the data and the engagement. And I know you do lots of that for our clients, don't you?
Yeah, and I always kind of think data will drive your decision making in benefits. If we've got certain benefits that we don't have much uptake on, that can help navigate what we're going to do from a communication point of view. Can we start to drive engagements? And yeah, data is always going to tell you where there's potential gaps. And again, technology providers are brilliant at giving this type of analysis. But I always think, before you start thinking, should we look at offering a new benefit? Should we be doing something else? Is actually right. Maximize what you've got at the moment, and that comes back to our piece with making your budget work harder. It's not necessarily about offering more; it's about making what you have work.
And sometimes, Dan, you're right, the communication piece is the key piece. How many times have we heard
Mm.
employees say, I didn't know we had that. I didn't realize that I had that benefit.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's about shouting from the rooftops about what you do have, and maximizing, as we were saying earlier, that sort of ROI, it's really big. Um, and the last one, which, as we alluded to earlier, small changes can really have a big impact for people. You're just maybe turning up the dial on something
Mm.
or uncovering something they didn't know they had, or even, for example, changing, I don't know, a life cover from a 2 times salary to a 4 times salary because that's what's come out of a survey, for example.
Mm.
Those small changes can make a real difference, mainly because people are communicated to and they feel listened to. So I think, probably the key one out of all of them, though, is start planning as soon as you can.
I agree, and I think this is, if we can plug ourselves slightly here, this is where we can help lend a hand. If it comes down to, right, let's do an audit of what currently is available, where we want to go, where we might potentially see gaps. This is where we help our clients, maximize the value of their benefits package. Because moving into 2026, we know that January there's going to be the people out there looking new year, new me, looking for a new job, etc. So, how do you make sure that you're keeping the best talent? How do you make sure you're recruiting the best talent? And that's about, benefits plays a part into that. So, for anyone who's listening, if you do want to get in touch, obviously our details are at the bottom of the screen, but probably the best place to go is our website. So that's illumity.co.uk. And yeah, we can have a chat and see if we can lend some value. So thank you for your time today, Tasha. I think we've
Thank
covered
you.
a lot there in a short amount of time, but yeah, maybe we'll do a couple of follow-ups with this. So if anyone did have any questions, please do feel to get in touch, and we will see you on the next one. Thank you, Tash.
Thanks, Dan.
Cheers. Bye bye.
Bye.